Okay, so let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah, let's do it.
Where did you start? What were you doing?
Yeah, so I started jiu-jitsu in 2007.
Okay.
The year was 2007. I was 17 years old. Like I said, I was born in 1990. And I was a kid that grew up, I was athletic, I played soccer, I played hockey, I was into team sports. I never had any desire to be like a fighter or anything, but I was into watching, my dad was into martial arts movies, Steven Seagal, he loved that, so we watched a lot of that together, a lot of like that stuff. And UFC was becoming popular, and I was into pro wrestling for a long time when I was young. And then UFC would come on after pro wrestling, and obviously it was like the real thing, and like the Ultimate Fighter reality show became a really big hit, and it became popular. And at some point when I was a teenager, UFC kind of started becoming like the cool thing to watch, right? So I got into that, and then I kind of became interested in like, okay, martial arts. Like I was, back then I was looking in the yellow pages to find a martial arts school, right? Which if you're young, you don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
Anyways, somehow, originally I wanted to try to do judo. I actually wanted to do judo because I saw Cara Parisian and Diego Sanchez. If you remember that fight, there were some really cool judo throws. Cara Parisian throwing Diego Sanchez.
Yeah.
I was like, man,
that guy choked me out twice.
Yeah, right? I was like, I want to be able to do that.
I don't know him, but I trained with him twice in California. Yeah.
I remember when I was a teenager working at Subway, watching this fight on my phone and being like, I want to learn judo. Like, I got to do it. But looking in the yellow pages, there was nowhere I could find locally. I lived in Wellington back then, too, where my parents live. They also live in Wellington. Now I have my own house, but anyways. So I ended up finding jiu-jitsu. I researched Brazilian jiu-jitsu a little bit on the internet. To me, it seemed, okay, this seems like a pretty cool thing. I didn't really want to get like punched in the head or anything. So yeah, I ended up finding jiu-jitsu. I found like there was basically kind of two gyms. Like I saw Fit Plus and I saw Titans. They kind of seemed like the MMA gyms at the time.
Yep.
And honestly, like I was kind of just looking at the fighters and stuff, and Roger Hallett obviously was a really awesome fighter. So
fantastic.
Great guy.
Legend for Nova Scotia.
I just kind of watched some of his highlights and fights, and then I was like, yeah, I think I'll go try Titans. Like Roger just seemed like really, not that I thought I could like beat him or everything. I thought like just to meet him and see him train would be cool because he seemed like a real pro. Like, anyway, so I went to try Titans with some friends. John Gale actually taught my first ever class. It was like a beginner's class. And yeah, I kind of just went from there. I started with two other friends. Within a month or so, those guys had kind of dropped out for whatever reason. And I just kind of kept showing up. I started getting better. After about 6 months or so, I kind of felt like I was like a part of the team. That's something I really try to make people feel like they're a part of the team a lot faster now.
What location was it for Titans?
That was back when they were in Fairview, below
Sicilian Pizza.
Yeah, below Sicilian Pizza.
It used to actually be a Hapkido school and Taekwondo school way back in the early 80s.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
A guy named Chan Man Yang, his son still teaches down on Spring Garden Road, but they used to have a Hapkido Taekwondo / Korean Judo school there.
Yeah, a lot of history. Amazing.
But that was I hear it was a nasty school.
Yeah, so I mean...
no offense, it was a good school, hardcore, but like it's the basement, like low basement.
Definitely, yeah. It definitely had a reputation, I think, as like a tough-nosed gym.
Yep.
And we definitely had a lot of hard training there. It was a real good group of guys, and like I got obviously really, really good at jiu-jitsu there. I got interested in tournaments. Jake McKenzie would stop by sometimes when we were there. He was a really seasoned IBJJF competitor. IBJJF was the biggest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament circuit in the world, so I got really into that. I ended up getting 3 medals from the World Championships at the lower belts. I got a bronze and a silver medal at the World Championships at blue belt.
Awesome, wow.
And I got a bronze medal at purple belt. So I would say that's kind of my high point of like competition. Like not many people can really say they've done that.
No, for sure.
And I have obviously a lot of medals locally. I've got medals from ADCC and stuff. Like I feel like I've become a pretty seasoned jiu-jitsu competitor. And a lot of that was just, developing that good, hard training with the guys I was good friends with back then. Like a lot of really tough training at blue belt and purple belt. Titans switched locations. We went from Fairview and they moved to Kempt Road. So, things kind of changed. They moved to where they are now in Bayers Lake. And then things happened. Some guys that were a part of Titans wanted to kind of split off and do their own gym. And this is really when I kind of started to see the like shifting landscape of like martial arts as it is now, because I hadn't seen any other just jiu-jitsu gyms exist. And Halifax BJJ, which obviously a very big, successful gym, great spot. They've really have a great thing going, and I was a part of that at the start, and I got to see, firsthand, like, okay, this is just a jiu-jitsu gym. It's still, people are interested in this. It's not just fighters that want to come in and train. It kind of attracts a different clientele. And then things happen from there. I actually got my black belt from Titans. Just give broad strokes here, but I did most of my competing and stuff through the lower belts when I was at Titans. I got my black belt. A number of guys kind of wanted to split and do their own thing. I was kind of torn between, both spots, not getting too political or anything, but obviously, it's a little bit of a tough time for me. I end up going with Halifax BJJ, and now I have my own gym. And how I would say that kind of happened is, I have young kids. Life changes a lot, obviously, when you have children. And I just felt like I was in a spot where I felt like I kind of needed to do something for myself and kind of just make a go of it on my own. So, when my son was born, he'll be 3 at the end of this month, so he was born in 2022. That's kind of when I started thinking about trying to do my own gym and kind of have my own students. So now that's kind of where we are now. So I would say that's kind of a quick.
Let's go back just a little bit. So when you were training at Titans, and you were just talking about not too many gyms around. I love history. So we have Titans. We know that. We had Fit Plus. Bushido Kai had their program, but originally we were under Titans. The very first, Nathan Stevers. Yeah. And of course, Abaya. Can't go wrong there. And I don't think there was anything in Cape Breton at that time. So I'm trying to think now, but I think those were like my club, Bushido Kai, was just a small little group, but Titans, Fit Plus, and Abaya were kind of the big schools at the time, right? Yeah. And then obviously things progressed from there. And
now there's like probably 50.
I think I counted now. We have 48 Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu clubs / classes, because some people just have a little rec center with a class in it. And I won't give away the name, but as of today, we have 99 black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Nova Scotia. And you'll hear about that later. But when you were originally training, Peter and Kevin were black belts then?
No, they were actually brown belts when I started.
Okay, so there was no black belts
then. There was no black belts.
That's important.
We had heard of this guy back then called Shane Rice, who was a black belt. Yeah. And obviously, some of you guys know him. He just wasn't in Nova Scotia at the time.
No, he was training in California.
Yeah. So my coaches, they were very good. They were very talented, but they had to travel to get graded. They had to go to New York City to be graded by Renzo Gracie.
Yeah.
So obviously, it's an expense and very, time consuming to go do that. So Kevin and Peter were brown belts for the first year or so that I was training. And then they got their black belts. I remember the first class that I went in with where they were black belts, they promoted Roger Hollett to brown belt.
Okay.
And that was the first time I had ever seen anyone really get promoted.
That's the thing. Back then, and even before that, when you saw someone with a blue belt, you're like, oh man, blue belt.
Oh, yeah,
now it's great to have a blue belt. There's nothing wrong with it. It's awesome. But there's a lot of them.
Yes.
And so when you think back to those days, blue belt was like, whoa, this guy's a blue belt. Or even a purple belt, you're like, oh.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And there's obviously with 90 black belts, I don't know how many brown belts, I don't keep track. Tons of purple belts, tons of blue belts. Yeah. So with that being said, I'm going to ask you a question, and you can be honest with it. The training you received back then obviously was much more challenging, difficult. It was harder, and it depends on the club and what they teach. And even before you were there, like obviously Peter and Kevin, they were training, and it was hard and tough. Has training gotten a little bit softer now? Depending on the club, but we're not saying any club, but is training gotten softer for people?
Yes, 100%. But it should be.
Yep.
It should be softer. And I'll explain why. It's because it'll appeal to more people.
Yes.
Right? We all want jiu-jitsu to grow, right? We all want jiu-jitsu to be a bigger thing. More people do it. Maybe someday it'll be in the Olympics if maybe that's what you want. But bottom line is we need just more people to know what jiu-jitsu is, like people know what hockey is or football is. So the only way that's going to happen is if more people do jiu-jitsu. So when I started jiu-jitsu, it really very much felt like a fight club. Like if you've ever seen the Rocky movie, when the scene when Rocky goes into Apollo Creed's gym, and everyone turn and they're looking at him like, who is this guy? To me, that's what it felt like when I walked into Titans for the first time. It was like very intimidating. And I know people even today, they still feel very intimidated when they walk into gyms. Yeah, it still happens. But I think it's actually very good that the training, not that it's become softer, but it's become, people realize like that's not the only way to get good, is to just smash people and beat them up and just say, oh, just come back tomorrow, you know. Maybe for the certain type of person, a young, athletic, tough guy, that's good. But to use an example, like say like a soccer mom isn't going to respond very well to that type of training. But a soccer mom can do jiu-jitsu, just like anyone can do jiu-jitsu, but she has to learn it in the right way, which wouldn't necessarily be a lot of hard, intense sparring. But anyone can learn jiu-jitsu techniques. Like I really believe that, and like I try to teach that way. I really try to baby the beginners. Like, you know, I don't force people to roll in the first class. I usually tell people don't roll in the first class unless I feel like maybe they have a little previous
or they
experience.
roll with you or something.
Or like, you know.
You see them wanting to go, oh, I really want to try. And you're like, well, come over here. Because you know they're not going to get hurt. You know you're going to protect yourself at all times.
100%.
You know, especially if they're going crazy. You know, but.
And like, you know, like martial arts, you learn how to kind of read people and you get to know people. And I feel like you have to know your students. And this obviously plays into the promotions and all that too. But you kind of have to know your students, because even me, I'm not going to coach every student in the exact same way. You know, like you see the guys that are here today, like, you know, they're the guys that are kind of joking around and like you can kind of make fun of them a little bit. They like that kind of thing, right? But not everyone is.
They're also tough guys.
Yes.
Like like, I'm like, wow, these guys, they're tough.
But you know, not every group of people responds the same way. I feel like you kind of have to know your students and know how to coach each person. But getting back to like is jiu-jitsu getting soft? I feel like it's just more people are realizing like we don't have to train hard every single day. There's not, you know, there's different ways that you can do it, and if more people are going to train jiu-jitsu, we have to be willing to play with the ways and change the ways that it's taught. So I think it is getting softer, but it is a good thing because jiu-jitsu is growing.
It's the evolution of the art. And every martial arts evolved that way. Obviously, most of them been out way before we were alive. But we can see the development of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, especially in North America. Let's just say in HRM in Nova Scotia. How originally it was pretty hard, like very tough. And back then it was always the rumor or the word that you had to beat the belt to get the belt. Like you want to be a purple belt, you got to beat whatever 4 purple belts, then you get a purple belt. Now it's obviously it's changed. But depending on the club, but that's evolution. And with that being said, I kind of got a feeling that like Gracie Jiu-Jitsu back when we first knew about it in the 90s, it's obviously Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has evolved so much since then that if you could take like say yourself or like just a good black belt or brown belt, put them back in time to that period and walk in their club and challenge them, you would probably do better.
Probably.
Because you just the knowledge and the techniques.
And that's the evolution of the sport. That's not me being like, well, I'm better than Royce Gracie.
It's the evolution. And that's 100%. How all the arts have evolved, especially with MMA. MMA evolved from, you know, the guy fixing air conditioners fighting in the second UFC to now they're pro athletes. They pay thousands of dollars to get the best training.
100%, and like that's what I mean. It's really impressive to watch just the evolution of the sport, like in the UFC, locally, like you know, the level of athlete in the UFC. Like Chuck Liddell was the champion, you know, 20 years ago, but now there's these guys like they're machines. These guys that are training,
100%,
and Pereira, but. When it comes to like the belt, I definitely remember those feelings too of like I'm a white belt. I have to be tapping the blue belts to earn the blue belt, right? I feel like most people that started when I started jiu-jitsu would probably say the same thing. Now I feel like it's definitely chilled out more in that way too. Like, I mean, that's one criteria. That's not necessarily a bad measure. Okay, if you're a blue belt and you're regularly tapping out purple belts, like that is a good thing, but it's not really obviously the only thing. Because you could be really good at one specific technique. Maybe you're just an ankle lock guy. You can get everyone with the ankle lock, you know. But if someone mounts you, you're screwed. You don't have a single idea how to escape, you know. For a long time, that used to be me. I was good at like the triangle choke. I was good at submissions, but I was really terrible at defense. And now being a black belt, I see kind of the overall game being more valuable. So I try to specifically work on defense. Sometimes I'll let my students take my back or mount me or just put me in a submission just so I can just try to work out. Like sometimes I got to tap. It's no big deal. Like I really don't care.
You can also just have a terrible attitude. That's why they don't want to promote you, because you're representing not only you, your club. You know, you can't have a bad attitude. Good attendance, good attitude. You know the technique. Maybe you could teach the technique a bit, and you're doing fairly good depending on your age and ability.
100%
in rolling.
Yeah, I mean everybody's different. Like, you know, I got some younger guys here. I got a lot of older guys here too, like older, you know, like 50 and so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say if you're judging someone for a criteria for a belt and you have no idea, you're like, what criteria should I be using here? I mean, obviously, like if they, you know, skill is one factor. That's great. You know, you have to have a certain level of technique. I do agree. Time, I would say, you know, everybody's different. Obviously, some gyms really prefer to do an attendance-based promotion system.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that.
Now, I don't do that, and I don't personally agree with it. No. But I can see some value in it, especially with some of the gyms that are just so big, they don't know their students, they're not sure who this guy is to that guy. Like, maybe the attendance-based is the best way to go. Personally, you know, I feel like when I started jiu-jitsu, it was a 2-year minimum, basically. Like, you were not getting a blue belt until you had 2 years of training.
Getting a belt online from just video instruction only.
Yeah, I would say
not training with the club. I mean, obviously, we've all watched YouTube videos and learned from there. It's how we research. Back in the day before YouTube, obviously you had to train with someone, but I'm talking about a person that just strictly sits at home, orders the tape, watches it, and then teaches it.
Yeah, no.
And has never trained under anybody.
No, you can't do that. You might as well just be sitting eating chips watching jiu-jitsu videos. You're not. You have to be on the mat, gaining the experience. You need a resisting person, a resisting opponent. You know, Ray, that's why people love jiu-jitsu, because they can do the sparring. Yep. They can get that full resistance. I know this guy does not want me to hold him down, but I'm going to hold him down anyways. He's going to be trying to get up, and like that's kind of the fight of jiu-jitsu. So yeah, I would say back on the time, like it used to be you're not getting a blue belt until you put 2 years in. I would say that's not true anymore at all.
Okay.
The evolution of jiu-jitsu, it shouldn't take as long to get a blue belt. Now I would say it's more likely like a year, maybe 18 months. It depends on how often the person trains, obviously. But if you train consistently, you know, I would say most people are getting a blue belt like, you know, within a year or so. If you have previous experience, you know, if you're already a wrestler, you know, I have a student who's a wicked wrestler. He was training like not consistently because he was in school, but you know, he had probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 months of jiu-jitsu training. Right. He's already a very, very good grappler. I promoted him to blue belt because he had a good amount of previous experience. I don't see the point in making him wait another 6 months just so I can say, oh, he waited a year.
Of course.
You know, so I don't think time is just.
Also, you have a great reputation, so the people you're promoting, there should be no question, right?
Right.
If an instructor somewhere has a really crappy reputation and they're just mass promoting people, which they do in all martial arts, including Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're like, no, there's a problem there.
Right.
So,
and like you said earlier, I mean, your students, they're representing you. You know? So, you know, I do kind of take that to heart, and, you know, I agree. I take every case individually, and I would rather someone wait a little bit longer and have a little more confidence, like at that belt, than like get it and be like, I don't deserve it. I know everyone feels like that when they get a belt. I did too. You get a blue belt, you feel like, oh, I'm not a blue belt yet. I'm not a purple belt yet. I'm not a black belt yet. But I feel like you grow into the belt, and that's true for most people. That's how I felt. And each time I got a belt, I felt like it was almost a little bit more responsibility, and it made me take it a little bit more seriously. So I feel like there's a time and a place for everything, and if you know your students well, you're watching them, like you'll know the time.
Perfect. Speaking of time, it's good. Tournaments. When you first, I mean, Abaya we know was one of the biggest tournaments in Nova Scotia at the time. There was, you know, a lot of little. Not even little tournaments. There was a couple little in-club tournaments, but Abaya was kind of the big one.
I'd say that was one of the big ones.
Credit to them. But how have you seen the change in tournaments, obviously, from when you started, when they sort of started growing, to now where you could have 2 on the same weekend somewhere.
Oh, it's crazy.
Like really quickly, how do you see the development of tournaments? And is it a good thing? Or is it a bad thing? Is it oversaturated?
Yeah, so I mean, when I started jiu-jitsu in 2007, I got interested in competing probably the next year in 2008. And there was maybe 3 jiu-jitsu tournaments a year. Like you said, there was the Abaya Open, Fit Plus.
Yes.
They regularly put on a tournament every year in June. A lot of times Abaya would put on a second tournament in October. They would do a no-gi tournament, then they would come back and do a gi tournament later in the year.
Right. With Marmac, I think.
Marmac, they also regularly put on tournaments, right? So there was 3, maybe 4 tournaments in the year, and that was it. That was basically the ones that we were training for. And local tournaments, they're great reps for bigger, more important tournaments, right? So my focus when I was a younger belt was the bigger tournaments. I was a young guy, I wanted to kind of like, do something big, so I was really focused on that. But locally now, like you said, I know specifically there is 2 tournaments next month on the same weekend. Now there's almost tournaments every single weekend if you look across New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. Is it oversaturated? I mean, probably a little bit. Like I feel like if there was a few less tournaments, we might have more people sign up.
Right.
Because the issue is, like I know a lot of these people that put on the tournaments too, and I think they're all doing a great job.
Oh, absolutely.
But I feel like sometimes people are maybe a little bit too focused on like the price or the cost when it's just like you said, maybe there's just too many. But I do like what people are doing. Sometimes guys are trying to make it more into a show, and it's not just like a tournament. And you got to try to do different things. But
different take. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry. What I was going to say is what I think is going to happen, and this will probably be in the next couple of years, is there will be more regulation just with jiu-jitsu in general and with the tournaments. They have a BJJ NB, BJJ New Brunswick, where it's kind of like under, a provincial thing or whatever. Now, I know you probably feel
No. A few people have asked me about that.
But I see that makes a lot of sense because like there's so many tournaments right now. Like how do you know what's the important ones? Like there's no way to know. Like they're all kind of equal, I guess. But it'd be cool if there was like, okay, there's these 3 tournaments that those are like the provincial championships or whatever. And then you could have the other tournaments a little bit more spread out and let people train for them. And I feel like it'd be a little bit more, people would have a little bit more desire maybe to compete. But then again, like who am I to say there's too many tournaments if people are signing up for them? So
sure, absolutely. And I mean, we know New Brunswick has like a sport organization. Like Judo Nova Scotia, they have Jiu-Jitsu New Brunswick. We don't have anything here in Nova Scotia. We have Judo Nova Scotia, which obviously, they have up and down membership too. But would we ever have that here in Nova Scotia? It's hard to say. I think what it is clubs have to sort of work together more.
And that's the tough part.
And maybe they don't want to, and that's okay too, whatever works. But if they're not willing to work sort of together, you can't create a big organization, get funding from Sport Nova Scotia, be recognized by sport, and obviously
it's almost kind of what happens when you get a bunch of black belts together.
Exactly.
Not to get too personal, but I'd say it's a very similar situation. Like I've been a part of it a few times now where it's just like, it's like if you get everyone together from all these different gyms, just people are going to have different ideas about how to run things and stuff. And like really it's part of the reason why jiu-jitsu is growing is because like, I mean, it'll even happen here. Like, I'll have, a lot of higher belts. Eventually someone's going to want to do their own thing and like have their own gym, have their own students. And like, that's great. Like back in the day, people would get really upset and really mad if someone switched gyms. If you went from one gym to another, you would be seen as a traitor.
Yeah.
In Portuguese, I think they have a word for it. It's called crianche or something like that. And basically, if you went to another gym, you would not be allowed to go back to this other gym. You would be shunned from your instructor and your students and all that. And personally, I think it's just a bunch of crap, honestly. I believe in today's world, like you're a paying customer. If you train at someone's gym, you're paying them money. Like to use an example everyone could relate to, you're not going to go to McDonald's and they'll be like, well, you went to Wendy's yesterday, so you can't eat here ever again. I feel like you should have a little more freedom as a paying customer to train where you want. And I'm like, if my students want to go train at other gyms, great. Like I'm thrilled that they want to spend most of their time training with me. But if they want to go and train somewhere at another gym, or they just happen to be traveling, like I don't ever want someone to feel like, oh, Presley's a really controlling instructor and don't go train other gyms. And I've just been a part of some of those situations or heard about some of that stuff. So I'm very open of like I'll train with anyone. And if my students want to go elsewhere to train and experience just different classes, like I say go for it. I've got to train at some great gyms. I got to train with Ryan Hall, who's a famous UFC fighter, famous jiu-jitsu athlete. I learned a lot from him. I actually got to just live in his house with him. Like I met him through Jake McKenzie, and then we got to be friends. I was a part of one of his ADCC training camps.
Awesome.
So, you know, it was a very valuable learning experience. I got to see how he kind of ran his classes, how he ran his gym, how he just kind of dealt with issues as they came up. I also got to train with Rubens Cobrinha Charles for like 6 weeks one summer when I was a blue belt. He's won the most featherweight championships of all time. He's
That's a great experience.
Best featherweight grappler in the world. And again, just like, you know, just absorbing a lot of that information, seeing how he did things, just seeing how he warmed up and how, you know, he was actually my age now when I was training there, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, just, I think you should be a sponge in jiu-jitsu and not just with technique. Like, you know, like ask the older belts, the more experienced people questions. Observe them. How are they rolling? What are they doing? Like, you want to kind of copy some of that. That's how you get good in anything. So
here's my motto, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Research within the group and outside the group. This will lead to the discovery of new material and or the creation of new material.
100%.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
And
technically, though, that comes from Jeet Kune Do, but I've switched the terms.
Even my own gym, like I've taken the guys over to 374 and we've rolled with the guys there. I've gone over to Tower, like my brother-in-law, Pat Carroll. Obviously, he trains at Tower. I'm good friends with Gavin Tucker. Like, you know, we still have a good connection. So I'm very open. Just like, I just love training jiu-jitsu and I'm happy to teach anybody.
And again, we'll switch to something else, but some of the old traditions of martial arts, you know, you train in one style under one instructor and you never leave. And that sort of kept going all through the, you know, the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even some of the 80s. And then kind of in the 90s, people started going to different clubs. And obviously in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, when it first started, everybody kind of stuck to themselves. But then now they're kind of like, and I think it's just expanded so much.
And the internet, obviously, you know, the internet just didn't exist until the late 90s. What I think it was, once these jiu-jitsu guys realized, oh, I can start making these videos and I can start making money. By you're only going to make so much money teaching these same people that you always teach. If you can expand your reach and kind of get out there and teach more people and kind of show them what you're doing, which that's kind of what I'm trying to do now with my videos and stuff, is just kind of, you know, I can't teach everyone jiu-jitsu. Not everyone's going to come to Wellington, Nova Scotia to be able to train, but I've taught a lot of people over the years, and I know a lot of people enjoy my classes and like how I teach jiu-jitsu, so that's something that I try to do just kind of with my videos, to just kind of share my approach to jiu-jitsu and some techniques and some kind of quick breakdowns and stuff. And just share more of what I know about jiu-jitsu is what I'm trying to do with my videos.
That's good. That's awesome. Okay, because we only have a little bit of time left. I do want to talk about gi, no gi.
Yeah, we should.
I know, because everyone's like, what are you talking about? So you do, just real quick now.
Yeah.
I know you do mostly no gi here, or you do a little bit of both?
I have one class a week where it's gi.
Right.
So I think I have 10 classes a week and 9 of them are no gi.
Right, and the rest are no gi.
Yes.
And so it's funny because, of course, obviously I'm a traditional guy first. I'm a traditional martial artist, but even though I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now, originally I was a traditional guy. And if anyone's familiar with kickboxing, North American kickboxing, Muay Thai kickboxing, there's no belts in it, no belts. There are some people that claim to be a black belt in kickboxing. Some clubs do it, and it's the silliest thing I've ever seen. There's no belts in kickboxing. And when I started doing submission wrestling or submission grappling in the 90s, of course there was no belts then either. But I noticed, and was trying to think on my way over here, when the switch came, and we'll continue with this conversation, but I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just I like debating.
Sure.
But when I was driving over here, I was trying to remember my history and when no-gi became popular here. Like, we know it throughout North America.
Yeah.
But when you first started, it was pretty much all gi, I would imagine, right?
100%,
And everybody was doing gi, and that's what it was.
It's the total opposite of what I do.
Right, and but I wonder what year people started switching.
Do you mean like specifically in Nova Scotia?
Yeah, let's say Nova Scotia, because that's where we're
I mean,
at.
I would say generally things kind of started shifting to no-gi when the Danaher Death Squad started becoming really popular. Eddie Cummings, Gary Tonin, the early days of Gordon Ryan. This would have been 2014, 2015, you know. In Nova Scotia, I feel like it usually takes a little bit longer for things to happen here, so I feel like it was probably a few years later that it hit and started becoming more popular. And I still feel like most gyms cater more to gi classes.
Sure.
But a quick story or reason why I do more no gi than gi now. I mean, if you look at the main landscape of jiu-jitsu, any of the major tournaments or events, CJI, ADCC, both no gi. Will you ever see a gi CJI? No. Probably not, right? And I think it's because they have the data. Flow Grappling and UFC on Fight Pass and these apps, like they're able to see who was watching what. They'll tell you how many hours this match was watched and this match was watched. They put it out sometimes even on their social media, and like people want to watch like Gordon Ryan and Nicky Rod, and it's just more and more no gi matches. So the big cash prizes, they're all mainly for no gi tournaments. I'm not saying the gi isn't still popular. It still is very popular. You'll see gi classes where there's 1 million people. It's great. For a while, honestly, online, I was kind of trying to make it my thing of like, I'm going to say the gi sucks and I'm just going to be a no gi guy. And it kind of was kind of funny for a little while, but then I was like, I don't really want to be people to be like, oh, Presley doesn't like the gi, because I actually do like the gi. Like, I think it's great, but I just feel like I'm catering more towards no gi. So I don't really say that online anymore.
Would you consider the gi traditional Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good. No, I like that. That's what I like. Good.
Because that's how it started. The guy started with the gi, right? So that is true to the tradition.
Yes.
And I do still enjoy having the gi class, but specifically when I opened up my own gym, I started realizing it's a lot easier to get someone to come in and try a class no gi. If I get someone on the phone, I can say, come and try a class tonight. You already have what you need. But if you say, yeah, you got to get a gi, it's just a barrier to entry. And for some people, they're just going to take a step back and be like, nah, I don't want to wear this gi. Some people, they see it as a little bit weird, this robe
sure,
thing.
Of course.
You kind of have to get used to it. And a lot of gyms, like, that's just what they do. They get you in for the class. They get you the gi right away. You see everyone else wearing it. Okay, this is just what we do. But I feel like it can be a barrier to entry. I can get more people just to come in and try the classes no gi. And I honestly feel like there's less techniques no gi. Therefore, it's a little bit easier to teach and learn jiu-jitsu. If I only have 100 techniques that I have to teach you to be good, that's a lot easier than 1,000 techniques that I have to teach you.
Sure.
And there's so much specific gripping with the gi. You have to know how to break the grips. It's just a constant grip battle. And like, in some ways I do like that because it becomes a little bit more of a chess match. But if I'm teaching someone new, I feel like, and I know this because I've taught a lot of beginners like over the years. I feel like I can get someone to a pretty good level if they're consistently training for like 3 months, no gi, like to an okay level. But in the gi, I wouldn't say that is the same guarantee because there's just so many more things you can do and so many more rabbit holes you can just get kind of sucked down into. So yeah, that would be kind of a quick reason why I've kind of shifted.
So what I was trying to get at, I guess, too, like everything you said is perfect, and it actually helps me a lot. And as a traditional person, you wear a gi, you get your belt, right?
Yeah.
If you're no gi, when do you wear your belt?
Never.
Maybe
you get a tattoo.
Yeah, exactly. So no, and obviously Eddie Bravo was one of the first people to really adapt no gi and belts and all that stuff too. So obviously if you're 10th Planet black belt, you're never. It's amazing.
And honestly, Eddie Bravo, very influential, and I just kind of got me thinking too of Jarrett McIntosh.
Yeah.
Great jiu-jitsu black belt.
Oh yeah.
Runs a very successful gym in New Glasgow. I think a lot of his classes are more no gi than gi. He's a great guy, and I started seeing Jarrett he was giving a lot of the belts no gi. He was one of the first people that I kind of saw doing that. And yeah, when it comes to giving belts, should you give belts no gi? I like to kind of keep a little bit of the traditional aspect and to give belts. And honestly, dude, I've seen people break down in tears.
Of course, yeah.
Just from me giving them a blue belt. It may seem insignificant to me now. I shouldn't even say that. I just see how much it matters for people, and I wouldn't want to take that away from them. I feel like that is a good measure of success and of progress. Okay, you're a blue belt now, you're a purple belt now. I still give them the belts. They can throw it in the garbage after they leave. I don't care.
Right. I read there recently, real quick, so I know we're getting low on time, is some people are suggesting get rid of the brown belt.
Right.
I don't know if you read that.
Yeah,
It
I
should
did
be
see
purple black.
Yeah, I think
Like,
Chris Howder maybe said.
Oh, yeah,
there should
that's
be
it.
3 belts, and I think what he's trying to say basically like you're either a beginner, you're intermediate, or you're advanced. And honestly, I didn't
And
even
elite.
Yeah, I've heard some of his interviews. I didn't read that specific article, but I
Yeah.
feel like I did see the headline. And in some ways, like, yeah, I get it, like what he's talking about, but I don't know. We could really get sucked down a rabbit hole with
we
this,
don't
but
get
I feel
stuck
like
on that.
I feel like you can
A
get
couple
so
more
long.
questions.
You can overdo it with the belts too, and the amount of stripes. I don't.
Stripes or no stripes?
I would
Some
go no.
clubs give stripes. some
Personally,
don't.
I would go no stripes, but
Stripes for white belt.
yeah, stripes for white belt are good. Stripes for white belt are good.
Okay,
It shows
and
some
then after
progress.
that, you get your blue belt, and then whatever you wait your 3-year, whatever it is.
Like if I was doing more gi classes than no gi classes, I would probably do stripes. But for me, it's like there's only one gi class during the week anyway, so I just don't see the value.
Sure. But let's just say though, but a club that does gi.
Yeah.
Most clubs around here we know give out stripes. You know,
Right.
my old club, Bushido Kai, at one time the MXT program, they didn't because that's what they're the guy from Brazil. No, they didn't give stripes. You know, and it often led to arguments and all that.
I think it's
stuff,
good,
you know.
and especially specifically for white belts. But you know, to use an example more people can relate to, it's just not how real life works. You know, you don't get promoted at your job 3 times a year just so you feel good about it. You know, so that's kind of how.
You're now a better accountant.
Yeah, right. That's never happened to me ever. You know.
You're at the next level of mathematics.
So that's how I see it. Like at some point you will graduate and progress to the next level. But I feel like sometimes people just overdo it with stripes, and it's like, okay, here's another stripe, here's another. Well, like what does it mean? You know, like I feel like in some cases it can be good, but I guess like anything, you can totally overdo it.
Right.
So I see more value in all my students do no gi. When I feel like, okay, they're ready for the next belt, I'll give it to them. I actually give them the belt. You know, we take the picture with the belt. It's great so people can see they have a little memento from when they got it.
Yep.
But like it's likely that they will never wear it. I have students here that they don't even own a gi. Like my student Brendan, he's a great blue belt, awesome guy. He'll never put on the gi.
Oh, I know him.
Yeah.
I know that guy really well.
Right?
He's one of the best survival experts in Canada.
Oh man, he's the
like
man.
wilderness survival. Good Filipino martial arts guy, old student at my club. Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, great jiu-jitsu. And yeah,
You got to look up the movie The Hunted.
Yeah.
Did he tell you about that? So there's a movie called The Hunted with Tommy Lee Jones and Benicio del Toro.
Yeah. He's chasing them, right?
Yeah, but the guy that's based on is who Brendan's instructor was.
Oh, really?
For wilderness.
Oh, okay.
Like apocalypse, go with him. He'll teach you everything. No, sorry to get off track,
No,
but
it's all good.
that's the level of students you got. They're amazing.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I get excited about that.
Yeah, so no, anyways, no gi. I still do personally give the belts, and like I said, the reason why is because like I've seen people like really be emotional, and like I see how much it means to people. So that's not. I'm never ever going to get rid of the belts. I think that's still important to show and give people the belts.
Okay, yeah. I like it. Very good. Okay, so we know real quick. Wrap up a couple quick questions, but we know that obviously Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has grown so much in the province. As of today, we have 99 black belts. Who's going to be 100? I don't know. And we have almost, I think, 39 clubs now. There's another one opening up in Middle Sackville.
Yep.
A fella's going to start that. Same
Alex.
sort of this. Yeah, Alex, same sort of system like you.
Yeah, that's great.
And which is awesome. He's been to our club Animal once or twice.
He's been out here too.
Yeah, just great guy, just super good guy. And I think we have more clubs now for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu than any other martial art now. Before it was Taekwondo. There's tons of Taekwondo clubs everywhere. But now it's... and I'm not going to keep you because I know you have family. But no, it's okay. So a couple quick questions. I always ask these questions.
Yep.
Give me your top 3 or 4 or 1, like people you look up to for martial arts wise. And it can be anybody. It can be Van Damme, Chuck Norris. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Steven Seagal.
I would say for me, the guys I've looked up to the most throughout my career have been Marcelo Garcia, small guy with killer technique.
Yep.
Hodger Gracie, just so dominant and like just submits everyone, you know, amazing grappler. I love Damian Maya. And for a smaller grappler, Cobrinha, Rafael Mendez. These are all guys you could watch, look up highlight reels and watch them all day. Just incredible technique. Those are the guys I like.
Right. Perfect. And do you play video games at all?
No, I mean I used to when I was a kid, but I got kids now, so I don't.
There you go. I was gonna say WWE or UFC.
I mean, I'm gonna have to pick.
Be honest.
I'm gonna have to pick UFC. But if you would have got me when I was 13, I would have said WWE.
Okay, no
sure.
problem. ADCC or CJI as of now, because I think they're doing a number 2, CJI.
Yeah, CJI. I'm taking the money.
Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. You into martial art movies at all?
Oh yeah, love them.
Yeah?
Love them. Yeah.
Awesome. You watch some of the classics or the newer ones?
I mean, I'm always looking for good recommendations, but I've seen like some good ones recently. I really like that Warrior movie. Now, me and Pat, my brother-in-law, had a debate about this because he didn't like Warrior, but I thought it was awesome.
Tom Hardy, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I love Warrior, yeah.
That's good. That's awesome. Man, there's so much that's happening with you, and obviously, now, do you still work?
Yeah, so I do. I feel like I'm working nonstop. Yeah, so the jiu-jitsu is my full-time thing. I do have a part-time accounting job where I do bookkeeping and personal tax.
But you went from full-time to now doing the gym more full-time.
Yeah, and I could definitely get into that story another time.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Like it's changed a lot. This started out as more of like kind of a part-time side hustle for me.
Yep.
And it's definitely become more of my full-time job. And it's my goal to just do a solo thing and just support myself off jiu-jitsu. I don't feel like I'm quite there yet.
Yeah, but you will be.
But
And you're
I feel
doing
like it
some
can be done.
seminars. I often see you doing seminars.
Yeah, I'm trying to get out there.
Which is awesome.
Yeah,
and,
for sure. Like I love teaching other gyms. If you're interested in if anyone out there is interested in having me come out and teach this little seminar class, I'd be happy to do it. So.
Yeah, but they got to pay for your time.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Anything else? That's it?
No, I think that's great. Yeah, thanks for the time. I love
no problem, man.
Love chatting with you, Ray. You're a great
I appreciate it.
Historian of local martial arts. No one else is doing this. I love that you're kind of getting out and actually getting into some gyms and stuff too. It's awesome. And I would just say anyone that wants to learn from me, or if you're able to come to my classes in Wellington, I'd love for you to come out. And if you can't, then just check me out on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook at Presley BJJ. That's where you can keep up with me and all the good videos.
You are the most social media. You do the most, I think, out of everybody.
100%.
Everybody I do quite a bit too. I'm obsessed with it. But you do a lot of stuff, which is awesome. You get your name out there.
You got to be a hustler, right? So
That's right. Yeah. Hustle to Presley BJJ as soon as you can. Okay, guys, that's it. I'm going to be really ghetto and reach over there and turn that off.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, man.